All right, good evening everybody and happy Sunday. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend, took some time off to relax, but it is back to business. Futures markets are open and stocks are getting hammered across the board. I think the S&P 500 E-mini futures contract is down almost 2%, I think about 1.75%. Same thing with the NASDAQ 100. Ticker symbol NQ, I think that's down about maybe 1.5 to 2% as well, and the Dow is down about 1%. So it's going to be a big week on Wall Street. Obviously, last week was also an extremely big week. We covered a lot on the channel. We talked about the CPI numbers, which came in hotter than expected, unfortunately. We talked about the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index coming in an all-time record low, actually lower than the readings that were present during the 2007-2008 financial crisis. So definitely not good. But we're seeing some sort of a divergence, I guess you could call it, because sales are actually up. Consumer spending is actually up, but consumer sentiment is at an all-time low. So consumers are spending more money, but their overall take and their outlook on the economy is at an all-time low. So here's the question. Are consumers spending because they want to, and they're going on vacation, and they're changing their habits from spending on traditional goods to more services and experiences, or are consumers spending more money because they have to, because prices of everything is going up? I don't know. We'll talk about that and more tonight on the stream. We are here live from New York City. I just flew in from Miami, Florida. Crazy day. Talk about a crazy flight. The flight was delayed. We had some issues with the landing gear, so we had to pull back into the gate to have some people work on the landing gear. Then we took off. And then we were very low on fuel, so we had to make a pit stop in Buffalo, New York to refuel so we can finish the rest of the journey. So crazy day, a little bit nuts, a little tired, so just bear with me here. But tonight we're going to be doing the Markets to Look Ahead stream. It's Sunday. We'll be covering every single piece of economic news, all the earnings. We have Oracle reporting earnings tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little bit. Larry Ellison and team is going to be doing that. But I think the big theme of the week is the FOMC meeting, right? And Fed Chair Jerome Powell pretty much signaled to the market that we're going to get a 50 basis point rate hike. But what did we talk about last week? Inflation's coming in hot, hotter than expected. So potentially 75 basis point rate hike? I don't know. We'll talk about it. But first, let's see who we have in the chat. Hey, the ABX girl is here. Good to see you, ABX girl from the Bronx. Always a pleasure to see you. Hopefully you had a fantastic weekend. Chris Beeman is my friend from the one and only Arizona. Rafael is here. Good to see you. Samantha R. Amanda Osborne. Rafael is here from Brazil. Samantha R. Good to see you. Jonathan Richards, what's up? Soho guy is here. Mohammed, the one and only, says good morning. Tom from Malaysia. Mohammed, always an absolute pleasure. And I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Nick rocks. It seems like we were just wishing for the weekend. I know. Now it's Sunday night. Yeah, the weekend went by fast, as they often do, right? Hey, Wazzy, says Tom, buying up now before having to pay more later. Says Wazzy. Yeah, so maybe consumers are front-running more inflation, perhaps. I think that's a pretty good supposition. Michelle K is here. Good to see Michelle K. David Randall, my good friend. Always a pleasure. Nick is here. Sabrina Fair, the whole team is here. So we are right outside of the Moynihan train station, 34th Street. It's going to be a shorter than usual stream because I do have to get home. It's going to be a busy day for me tomorrow. Anna is here, says happy Sunday, doing cardio while watching. Awesome. I'm going to get some cardio in right now. Vinny Castellano, the one and only from Staten Island. I hope you and Maria are doing well. Solo 401, what's up? Solo is joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll get a good look at the World Trade Center. Wendy is here, says hail, hail, the gang is all here. Indeed we are. Sherry Rodrigo, good to see you. Jewel Mars says hello from North Carolina, love that. Skylar Myers says hello, Tom and chat. What a beautiful shot. Yeah, so check this out. This is the Empire State Building, but in the background you could also see Madison Square Garden all lit up for the Pride colors. June is Pride Month, so we should be having a beautiful view. Hopefully later tonight, the Empire State Building will turn on the multi-color scheme. I think that'll be cool to see. Hey, Kirby says, do you live/work in Miami? Why do you travel so often? Yeah, so Kirby, that is a good question. I split my time 50-50 between City. Oops, sorry about that. Between New York City and Miami. So the vast majority of my clients are actually here in New York. But I do have some clients in Miami that I have to attend to, but the vast majority of my clients are in New York. So I'm in enterprise tech sales. So I sell hardware and software into the Fortune 500/Fortune 50 type suite. But my main focus is in healthcare. So you could think about the large healthcare providers and payers. I sell a lot of solutions in there. And the funny thing is, you know, before the pandemic, obviously New York City is number one for healthcare, in my opinion. Obviously a little biased. But during the pandemic, especially a lot of the undercapitalized or underfunded healthcare organizations, whether that be home healthcare or nursing homes and assisted living facilities, a lot of those places went under a lot of M&A activity. So there was a lot of consolidation in the space. So it's funny, a lot of my clients here in New York actually acquired home health care agencies, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes in Southern Florida. So it's definitely sort of lucked out there. But yeah, I'll be back and forth, splitting my time 50-50 between New York and Miami. The two best places on earth. Ren10 says, Tom, can you gauge how busy lunch is in Manhattan? Yeah, I mean, things have been getting a lot busier, to be honest. You know, you guys know if you've been watching the stream for a long time, I worked in Midtown Manhattan for many years, right there in the Marsh McLennan building. And before COVID, everything was extremely packed. And now it's sort of getting back to normal, which is good. But I would say ever since the summertime and the nice weather hit, definitely a lot more people. Hey, Mark Francis is here. Says hello from Texas. Medical Center, sorry, it's the largest in the world. Hey, Mark, good to see you, my friend. Yeah, I probably have some biases. But Mark, good to see you, my friend, from Texas. Roy S. is here. Sabrina Fair, good to see you. Wendy England is here, and British Gray from Tampa, Florida. Hope you are well. Kirby says, cool, makes sense, thanks. Appreciate it. Sadiq says, hey Tom, how are you? Welcome back to New York. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Photos from around New York says, hola Tom, and welcome back. Thank you, photos. You know, crazy time getting back here today, though. You know, and I was looking at an interesting statistic, and they were comparing the demand for travel or airfare to 2019, or I should say the latter end of 2019 to now. And demand for airfare or air travel is up, I believe, 37%. Now, why would we want to make that comparison to 2019 as opposed to 2020, 2021? Well, the pandemic, right? The pandemic literally shut down the world. And if anybody was traveling during that time, you probably, or there was a good chance you probably got the entire airplane to yourself, which is exactly what happened to me. But now, things are packed. The airports are absolutely packed. Not an empty seat on any airplane. And here's what I've noticed, to take it a step further. I think I may have had one flight that wasn't delayed out of all the flights I've taken this year. So out of every flight that I've taken this year in 2022, the flight was either delayed severely, canceled altogether, or while you were on the plane about to take off, about to barrel down the runway, at 300 miles an hour, they discover some sort of mechanical problem with the landing gear or an electrical problem, in which case you have to go back to the gate to get it fixed, which I guess is a good thing. I'd rather find out those problems as we are making our way to the runway, as opposed to barreling down the strip at 300 miles an hour, right? And lastly, the flight or the aircraft is low on fuel and we can't make it there all the way. So I think it's, we're starting to see a lot of compounding things at once. And I don't think it's the airline's fault necessarily. I just think it is a huge pull forward in demand, or let's say demand that is coupled together from 2 years all into 2022 at the same time where we have scarcity in skilled labor. So we have scarcity in airline mechanics, scarcity in pilots. So there's been a lot more delays, a lot more cancellations, and in my experience, the cost of airfare is up roughly 150%, just based on my calculations since last year. You guys know that I buy a plane ticket for roughly 50 to 70 bucks. I'd say between New York City and Miami. This year it's probably $150 to $200. So, and I think, in summary, it's the crazy amount of demand on top of a shortage in skilled labor, which are the mechanics, a shortage in pilots, and an unbelievable rip-roaring commodities market where we have crude oil busting up against 123, 125 bucks, which makes jet fuel and gasoline for regular cars and stuff a lot more expensive. So I think it's just a good time to be patient with everybody. I was on the flight and there was a lot of disgruntled people that were, yelling at the flight attendants, all upset. But at the end of the day, these people are going through it as well. So I think it's just best to just deal with it and not throw a fit about it. Brian Forrest is here. Good to see you, Brian. David says, this is scary considering the safety risk. Yeah, the technical issues have been a little bit crazy, to be honest. But here we have our pal, Billy Joel. Hey, retired in Florida. Oh, wow. Yeah, retired in Florida, 100%. Please pray for the 49 souls. Yeah, it's horrible. I agree with you, 100% retired in Florida. Raul says, hey there, greetings from Colombia. Good to see you, my friend. Hey, Brad's Brains is back in New York. How much was the flight? I think I spent $160 on the flight. Sora says, they make the beautiful rainbow. Good to see you. David C. Wendy England, good to see you. Solo 401, welcome. Tin Man, good to see you. Sabrina Ferris says, hey Tom, every flight that I have taken has been overbooked. I have flown about 6 times this year. Yeah. Well, I think it makes sense, right? I think it makes sense when we really dive into it, because if we understand that for the past 2 years, everybody has been essentially at home, people want to get out and they want to travel. So, and we covered this extensively at the beginning of earnings season, if everybody remembers this. Usually the kickoff earnings season, you have the financials. So we did a big deep dive right here on the channel about all the major investment banks. So the reason why it's important to really pay attention to the financial earnings, right, like JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and on, is because it'll give you a really good look into credit card and debit card spending data. So here's what a lot of the big CEOs of a lot of the banks, such as Bank of America, JP Morgan, and we covered this before, but I think it's appropriate to cover it again. They said Americans are still spending. Consumer spending is extremely strong, but they've just reallocated or shifted what they're spending on. So here's a good example that I believe Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, said. You know, during the pandemic, we saw many consumers spending a lot of money on subscription services. You could talk about like a Netflix subscription and Apple TV subscription, all of those type of things, Peloton subscriptions. You also saw massive e-commerce spending for obvious reasons. People want to order in. They don't want to, go out to the stores because we were in the middle of a massive pandemic. But now a lot of that spending has simply shifted and allocated to different sectors of the economy. And one of which JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said was to experiences. So a lot of the credit card data, a lot of the transactions, corporate travel is coming back a little bit. I've been traveling a lot to see clients. So you could think about anything like airfare, hotels, casinos. So I think the consumer, even though they are stretched due to inflation, and if you guys want to rewatch the streams from last week, we did a deep dive into the CPI report. I think even though the consumer, the American consumer, is stretched, they still want to go on vacations this summer. They still want to go out because they've been so cooped up. So I think they are just reappropriating their spending from the Netflix, from seeing movies inside, subscriptions, to more experiences. Maybe they are going to take a vacation. So something to keep in mind. Hey, DowJones.eth, what's up? This is peace, love. Yes, Madison Square Garden. Yeah, so we're right outside Penn Station. And it may look egregious, it may look horrible now, but that is not the case. This is going to be a complete transformation. I think it's called the, I actually don't know what it's called, but it's called like the New Penn Project. And it's going to be completely brand new. There's going to be a brand new Penn Station. There's going to be shops. There's going to be food and dining here. It is going to completely revolutionize 7th and 8th Avenue. And I think it's long overdue, because if you're a Long Islander specifically, or you're from New Jersey, oftentimes you spend a lot of time here, as do I. So I think it's going to be good to see this place completely redone over the next couple of years. Hey, Ryan Royal, this is good evening, Tom, and everybody. Hey, Jonas here, good to see you. Kim Grant. Mike C says you couldn't buy a webcam during the pandemic, the supply was dry. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. Another interesting thing, and I know we talked about this last week, but the median price of gas in the United States now reached $5 a gallon for the first time. And reporting out of AAA, they've seen almost 100% increase in customers calling in because they ran out of gas. So what does this really tell us? This means that consumers are really trying to stretch every last drop of gas in their tank. But unfortunately, that's leading to a lot more AAA calls for people that are running out of gas. So I don't know. I really don't know how long this United States consumer can stay resilient. Here's my thesis, and we sort of talked about this last week and in the Behind the Street newsletter. My thesis is that Americans are able to stomach the price increases temporarily, all but temporarily, because they are putting this expense on their credit cards. And we know this because household debt reached an all-time record high last month. Here's why we need to watch that. Okay. Talking about the Federal Reserve, the FOMC meeting concludes Wednesday of next week. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is probably going to raise interest rates by 50 basis points with probably a 50-50, right? There's a lot of analysts coming out at Jefferies and Goldman Sachs saying that due to the fact that the CPI numbers came in so egregiously high, we may have a surprise 75 basis point rate hike. Now, that's not good for people who hold a lot of credit card debt, because if you are maxing out your credit cards and paying the minimum payment, right? If you work that into your budget, you say, okay, I could pay the minimum payment. Well, that minimum payment's going to go up, and it could go up quite significantly. Okay, I think it's advantageous to lock in debt when it's good debt at low rates. So that could be like a mortgage debt where it's a fixed rate and it's not an adjustable rate, right? You never want to get a free floating rate or an adjustable rate. That's what crashed the economy in 2008, when a lot of people were acquiring debt, had the acquisition of debt at a floating rate or an adjustable rate. So when interest rates went up, their monthly payments ballooned, right? And they couldn't afford to pay them. This could happen in the credit card sector as Americans pile up into credit card debt. They make those monthly payments or the minimum payments, but as the Fed raises interest rates, that interest on those credit cards are going to go up, and oftentimes the rates could be like 20% or more. So just to keep a quick note on that, I think this is the time to aggressively attack any and all debt that's above 6%. But guys, enough talk about that. It's Sunday night. We have to take a look at the Empire State Building, the greatest building in the entire world. The beacon of hope, the beacon of capitalism, the beacon of free markets and opportunity. It's looking fantastic. Brad's Brain says, I was told by an admin staff worker this week that it's costing $100 more the week she works in her office, and her electric bill is past due. Oh my God. Yeah, that is not good. Hey, The Real Brill says, I guess everyone has an infinite credit limit around me because everyone is outside consuming here. I'm the only person who is affected by the higher prices. Yeah, so I understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't say that necessarily. Oftentimes it can be easy to look at what everybody else is doing and say, hey, nobody else is being affected by this, but I can guarantee you people are being affected by it. I'm affected by it. As I've just got through telling everybody, my airfare expense, and I travel a ton for business. I'm in enterprise tech sales. As you guys know, I have to travel the country. And my expense is up 150% from last year. 150%. Hey, Crypto Realms, this looks really pretty chill tonight. Yeah, it's awesome night in Manhattan. Empire State Building is looking fantastic. Kurt Flirt 2 says, I am affected by it too. You certainly aren't the only person. Yeah, I think everybody is being affected by it, right? And I think if you watch the mainstream financial channels or the mainstream media, I think they can tend to be a little bit polarizing, right? They could say, oh, this is the reason why inflation is out of control is because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And then if you watch CNN, you're like, oh, it's out of control because of, Putin and Trump and all that stuff. Regardless of if that's true or not, and here's the reason why I'm saying that. I think it's important. So just hear me out on this. As the average everyday American, especially in times like this, I would completely ignore all of that nonsense. And here's why. At this point, I think it's appropriate to follow what I call the follow the money rule. So let me explain that a little bit. When you have politicians on both the right and the left coming out playing the blame game, a little light bulb has to go off in your head. And you have to say, wait, am I being propagandized? And here's how you tell if you are. Let's review. Well, you're like, okay, midterm elections are coming up. So anything that I hear from a politician right now is probably going to be disingenuous, either on the right or the left, because they're trying to persuade you to vote which way or another. The most important thing to do right now is not to fight as to why inflation is getting out of hand. And as we all know, it's the Federal Reserve. but you need to take actionable steps in your life to make sure you come out on top of this thing and it doesn't crush you, right? If you listen to too much of the media, the news, if you watch CNN, Fox News, whatever it is, you're going to spend way too much of your time fighting amongst each other than focused on solutions and solving those problems. So I like to follow what's called the follow the money rule. So if we understand that this is midterm election time, anything that comes out of a politician's mouth on either the right or the left is doing that with a specific intent or a specific set of circumstances, if that makes sense. Man, this is a great shot of the Empire right here. Hey, Sophie M is here. This is hello again from Australia. Gorgeous night on your walk. Thank you so much, Sophie. Yeah, it's a beautiful night. We're actually near Koreatown. This is one of my favorite spots in the city. And it's good to see a lot of people that are back out and walking around, which is fantastic. Samantha R says 9 out of 9 shot. I'm going to show you a 10 out of 10 shot as we walk down to, well, you know what? We're not going to go to Madison Square Park yet. I want to take you guys all the way down 31st Street. I want to show you something really quick. Hey, Eric20 says, wasn't the mess created years ago when the Federal Reserve kept interest rates low unnecessarily? Yeah, I mean, Eric20, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. You know, it's all about what they like to call kicking the can down the road. And somebody's going to get left holding the bag. And that's why I've always said, and look, this is just my opinion. I always like to clarify when I'm making an opinionated statement because I could be wrong, right? I think everybody could admit they could be wrong. I could be wrong. But here's what I think, and this is an opinionated statement. I think presidents take too much credit when the economy is good, and they also get too much blame when the economy is not going good. Does that make sense? And you guys know I tend to lean more conservative, but I think presidents, no matter who you are, Democrat or Republican, if the economy is doing good and it just so happens to be a Republican in office, the Republican takes all the credit and says, oh, it's because of my policies and all this. Same thing with the Democrat. And the same thing when the economy is in a downturn. My thesis is the real driver of an economic cycle is the Federal Reserve. Because if you understand finance, which is essentially the business of money, it's essentially the cost of acquiring new money. And when you've had, to your point, I think it was Eric20 that just made that point, if you have a prolonged period of time when interest rates are artificially suppressed, that means money is extremely, extremely cheap. So it will encourage business investment, sometimes in an arbitrary manner. Right? That's why a lot of the times on this stream we'll talk about like the Russell 2000 companies and how many of them are zombie companies because their exact existence is predicated on borrowing money at extremely, extremely low rates. So if I'm a big company or even if I'm a startup, and if inflation, if the CPI print is like a 7.9, now it just came in at like an 8.6. But if I can borrow cash at 3%, isn't that technically free money? So I think what has to do with the economy more, making it good or bad, or, you know, in a bull market in terms of the equity market or a bear market, is the Federal Reserve, because they're the ones who control, number one, the Fed balance sheet, right? And if we look at the Fed balance sheet, that is made up of mortgage-backed securities and US Treasuries. So when the Fed goes on a bond buying binge, essentially that is what the term they call the, money printer go burr. But when they are shrinking their balance sheet and letting those maturities roll off the balance sheet, that is a way for the Fed to shrink the money supply in the economy, thus slowing it down. So if Fed Chairman Jerome Powell tomorrow decides to raise interest rates 5% overnight, boom, you can almost bet 100% the stock market's going to get face ripped through the floor, right? And that's not really, and then people would say, oh, look, it's Joe Biden, right? If the Fed raised rates under Trump or under Bush or under Obama or whatever, insert any sort of puppet, or president you want, the equity market will tend to follow the direction of the Fed balance sheet. But that's my take. Again, could be wrong, but that is sort of my thesis. Hey, David Randall says, I have charted the economy by my own life experiences, and I could say definitely for me, my life has been better according to who was in office at the time. Very interesting. Yeah, and look, David, maybe you're right. Melee says Coinbase stock is $78 a share, bad for crypto. Anna Ames says hello, good to see you, Anna Ames, welcome. Yalved says, hey Tom, how are you? I'm doing very good. I am doing very good. Crypto Realm says, yes, I agree with you. Brad's Brains says, Trump had a real impact on business regs and oil production. That can't be denied. He was responsible for the success pre-COVID, and he disagreed with the Fed throughout, but didn't impact that one. Yeah, so Brad's Brain, that's you're right on that. But I think for a large part, right? Like you can, in large part, like if we want to, I don't really want to get too political, but to piggyback off your point, Trump was technically a Republican, right? He ran under the Republican ticket. But if you looked at his, fiscal policies, I mean, he spent like crazy. He spent like a Democrat, right? So at some point, and I understand there was COVID, we had an unbelievable pandemic that nobody could have predicted, which we had to spend money on. I get that. But if you print trillions of dollars and start sending people checks, one way or another, the inflation ramifications are going to come at some point. So, some Democrats right now could actually make the argument and say, hey, I blame the inflation on Donald Trump because he sent everybody stimulus checks. And I get that. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think the Federal Reserve has more power than any sitting president in relation to the economy, or let's just say the performance of the equity market. But I totally see your point, and I agree. Trace Samas has stopped speaking economy. Tom M says Joe Biden is bad. He makes Jimmy Carter look good. Yogi is here, says the government's going to want those stimulus with interest. Kurt Flirt says, remember Tom, Trump was a Democrat and then he switched to win the election. Hey, Ron 1-to-1 says back in New York City. Yeah, so we're back in New York City, probably for only about 7 days though, guys. Maybe about a week, because then I have to fly right back to Miami. Essentially, I have a desk here. I have a really nice standing desk, which I've been procrastinating on sending back to my house down in Miami. So I'm gonna be here. I finally have to ship my standing desk back to Miami. Also on the 16th, I will be in the city at a healthcare event. I'm going to be presenting some material on wage parity, if any New Yorkers are familiar with that, and EVV, or electronic visit verification. And we are going to briefly talk about EMR integrations with some different APIs that some startup companies are working on, and we're going to do a little bit of a keynote there. I'm thinking of filming that keynote and then putting it up on the channel, so maybe you guys could have some takeaways there. Hey, NYC says, how much money has the government spent in Ukraine? I'm not sure the exact amount. Is it 80 billion, I think we sent over there? 60 or 80 billion, I think. Hey, DowJones.eth with a very good point there. So DowJones.eth says if your crypto is on Coinbase, it is not yours. Take the time to learn how to store it properly. I agree with that. You know, there's an old saying, if it's not your keys, it is not your Bitcoin. So DowJones.eth, you are 1000% right, my friend. Christina says, Tom, Santiago, Chile? I've never been there, not yet. 3T3 says, most don't really see the US has produced the most oil for several years. Yeah, I mean, we were definitely energy independent. You know, I think you could obviously say, and I'm trying to get to all the comments, but there's a lot of comments flying. There's definitely arguments to be made. We were 100% energy independent, and we made a huge blunder in the energy independence, which is totally 100% factually correct. But everybody, it's Sunday night. You know what that means. I gotta show you guys my favorite Korean restaurant in the city. It's right here on 31st Street, and it's called Take 31. So if anybody's coming to the city, if you're visiting or if you live here, you gotta come here. This is Take 31. This is one of the greatest Korean restaurants in New York, in my view. And I think a couple of you who watched the stream have told me you've been here and you really liked it. So I just wanted to make that quick note right here. So let's walk down to Madison Square Park, because from Madison Square Park, we're going to be able to see an amazing view of the Empire State Building. And hopefully by that time, they will be changing the colors on top of the Empire, so we can get a look at that. I missed it yesterday because I was in Miami, but... Hey, Ken Glass. This is Tom, you're very right, but I have to play safe. Pulled 70% out in October, so looking for a good reason to ride it out. Yeah, so Ken, I think you're 100% right. If you got the Behind the Street newsletter, in my actively managed accounts, I think we got the bagpipes going on. Love that. Love that. In my actively managed brokerage account, I was about 75% cash. I got stopped out of a lot of stuff this week. So now I'm almost at like 90, which is, I've never been in that high cash position before in my life in my actively managed long short portfolio. This is the One Vanderbilt building, which I have yet to go up top in the observation deck, but we will be doing that very soon. A lot of other streamers have been telling me, and you guys in the chat too have been telling me we have to get up there. Beautiful building, and I believe one of the best observation decks in New York City. Christina says, Tom, do you ever want to go to Ireland? I do. So I'm actually Irish. I'm 50-50 Irish-Italian. So my dad's side of the family is Irish. My mom is Italian. So my ancestors come from County Mayo, Ireland. And then my other side comes from Naples, Italy. So I definitely do want to go to Ireland 100%. That is definitely on the bucket list. But in order to do that, I got to get my passport. And right now, I'm having a really, really hard time with that, getting the passport, because there's such a backlog of applications. So I got to figure it out. We'll figure it out though. Hey, Kirby says, hey Tom, can you make the same argument with banks and your brokerage account, not your keys? So not really, Kirby. So here's, with Bitcoin, you have, so let me just clarify this. I think a lot of the alternative coins, and I think a lot of the people in the chat disagree with me, but that's fine. I love disagreement. I don't deal with any of the altcoins. I think a lot of them are either number one, outright scams, or, as I've said many times, with my, minor background in securities law, by definition, I believe that a lot of these altcoins are securities, in which case I definitely do not want to be buying or selling them. And I think the people that are soliciting these unlicensed securities could potentially get in a lot of trouble. Now, with Bitcoin, it is not, in my view, considered a security. I would either consider it like a commodity, store of value, something like that. But what DowJones.eth was talking about in relation to if you buy Bitcoin on an exchange like Gemini or Coinbase or something like that, and you leave it on the exchange, they hold your private keys, right? So in theory, if there was ever a cybersecurity event or an attack on the exchange, hackers and things like that could see your private keys and steal your Bitcoin. But if you remove your Bitcoin to what you call cold storage in the industry, which is offline, you're the only one who knows your private keys. So hence the term, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Beautiful night out here, by the way. It's definitely refreshing coming from Miami. It's not humid here. It's a really nice night. Kurt Fleur 2 says the altcoin thing is over with. It seems Dogecoin, baby Doge or whatever. Yeah, I don't even pay attention to any of that stuff. I think it's a little bit too ridiculous for me. Hey, XXX is good night, everybody, and Tom. It's been a long time. It's good to see you, my friend. Hey, Charlie Richardson is here. Welcome. Good to see you. Hey, Eyeglass Lady says, I renewed my passport well before it would expire and was surprised how quick it was done. But that was a renewal. I have a real ID for domestic flights. Very nice. Good to see you, Eyeglass Lady. Noodles XCX says, Tom, how long did the US stop being energy independent? What happened? Well, a couple things happened. I don't really want to go into it because it's going to cause a big blow up in the chat with politics. But essentially, I think we're taking a little bit too aggressive approach with all of this ESG mandates and green energy stuff. And I'm a huge fan of green energy. But I think we're doing it a little bit too fast when we don't have the actual infrastructure available to take over the capacity of energy that we actually use. Wind and solar, as of right now, is not going to be enough to generate the power that we use. But everybody, so big week next week on Wall Street. A couple things to look out for. Obviously, we know the Federal Reserve is the #1 driver of this market. So we know that we are 100% in the process of quantitative tightening. Okay, so we were in an era of quantitative easing, in which case the Federal Reserve was acquiring assets on their balance sheet. And that included anything from agency mortgage-backed securities and US Treasuries. But now, starting June 1st, the Federal Reserve will be unwinding its balance sheet, I believe to the tune of $40 billion a month. Then after 3 months, that $40 billion is gonna go to $90 billion. Okay, while at the same time, they are raising interest rates. So last week, and here's the reason why that's important. Ever since the lows of the 2008 financial crisis, researchers at BlackRock, it was either BlackRock or Jefferies, I have to go back and look. I put it in the Nightbot link somewhere. They said there's about a 90% correlation in the expansion and contraction of the Fed's balance sheet and the prices of equities. So you could just say the stock market. So as the Federal Reserve's balance sheet balloons and goes up, so do stocks and asset prices. But as the Federal Reserve heads into quantitative tightening, which we're doing right now, data shows that stocks will continue to go down. So I don't think, in my opinion, this is the time to be buying stocks yet, especially if you're managing money for clients or whatever, and you have a P&L that you have to talk to every single year. Wow, guys, check this out. So this is a view of the Empire State Building. From 5th Avenue, I think we're on, this may be I think it's 28th Street, excuse me. So Empire State Building and 28th Street. Beautiful here. Let's walk down one more block because you're going to be able to see a better view. I want to show you guys. So yeah, anyway, I was saying, here's what I think. And we've written about this in the Behind the Street newsletter. I've sort of wrote a thesis on this, that I believe, since we are in a midterm election cycle year, right? It's actually normal for the stock market to underperform for a couple reasons. The market in general typically does not like new rules, new regulations, higher corporate taxes, and all this stuff. So as midterms rolls around, there could be significant changes in both houses of Congress, right? If it flips all Republican, if it flips all Democrat, that could mean there could be new regulations, new rules one way or another. But as midterms roll through and the market now has more clarity on what could or could not happen, the third year and the fourth year of a president's term is actually usually pretty positive for stocks. So here's what I think may happen. I think the Federal Reserve could possibly be doing the dirty work now with raising interest rates and quantitative tightening. And then in the third year of Biden's term, once we get inflation under control, the Federal Reserve will come out and telegraph to the market and say something along the lines of, we are going to stop quantitative tightening, we are going to stop raising interest rates, and see how the CPI reacts. And if the CPI does not continue to go up, then the Federal Reserve may start quantitative easing again, in which case, if that happens, I would get so long this market that it's not even to be believed. And I think that is when, let's say if you're a hedge fund manager now, let's say if you're just managing your personal account, I think that is the time where you have the potential to generate a ridiculous amount of alpha. But that's all speculation. I think that could happen, right? But the number one goal of the Fed and the Biden administration right now, as it should be, is to get inflation under control. Because if inflation is still printing at a ridiculous print, let's say 9% or 10% in the third or fourth year of Biden's presidency, there's no way he's getting reelected. There's a chance he'll get reelected if he gets inflation under control. I mean, if the Federal Reserve gets inflation under control and we actually see CPI numbers going down, we could potentially set ourselves up for a big rally in the third year, latter half of the third year, in the fourth year of Biden's term, because we may start quantitative easing again, in which case that is when the money printer and economic conditions will ease up a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that? But that's sort of my my thesis about things now. Here, let's cross here because you guys will get another great view of it. Empire. Hey, Jones, this great shot of the Empire State Building. I think my favorite thing about this shot tonight, and we're on the corner of 5th Avenue and 26th Street, is look at the illumination of the Empire with the clouds in the background. Fantastic. Hey, James, is Tom, futures are down big tonight. Yeah, I think before we started streaming, James, I believe the S&P was down almost 2%. I think the same thing with the NQs, or the NASDAQ 100 futures. I think they were down about 2% as well, but the Dow was maybe around down 1%. Now, you know, it's funny because the NASDAQ composite, or the NASDAQ 100, either one of the indices you could follow, that's down like 30%. But the S&P 500 has been a little bit more resilient. Does anybody know why? Does anybody know why that the S&P has been a little bit more resilient and have gone down less than the NASDAQ? Right, because the S&P has exposure to financial sector, so the big investment banks, the broker dealers, and energy, right? And energy is doing extremely, extremely well, but in the NASDAQ, it's all tech stocks, right? And they do not have that exposure to financials and energy. But I was reading a really good report. I think I retweeted it on my Twitter. So if you guys want to check it out, if you follow @WalksWallStreet, just scroll down my Twitter feed. Somebody did a really, really good analysis of historical stock market bottoms. And usually the NASDAQ bottoms before the S&P 500 because the NASDAQ tends to go down a lot more than the S&P. But that's just explaining it in layman's terms. But if you look on my Twitter, I forget the analyst who posted it, but she did a really good job of breaking it down. So please check that out if you want to follow @WalksWallStreet. But we are almost to our destination here. Hey, Mario's here. Good to see you, Mario. Sploke Channel says next JP Morgan 401 equals bond market. David Randall says political swings have more to do with social climate than the economy. This is why various issues are created, says David Randall. Possibly. I think that's an interesting point, David. TMB says smaller cap. Yeah, so the smaller caps are like the Russell 2000s. And I think that, small cap companies in general, I don't really want to generalize, but they tend to be more rate sensitive because a lot of the companies in the Russell 2000 tend to not have as explosive earnings growth as, let's say, some of the companies in the S&P. All right. But if you guys are enjoying our conversation tonight, and you want a little bit more in-depth detail, I write a financial newsletter that is free every single Tuesday or every other Tuesday after the market closes. So if you scan the QR code on your screen, it'll bring you to a landing page for the Behind the Street newsletter. So we talk about not only the US equity markets, but emerging markets, as well as fixed income, a little bit of the cryptocurrency markets, and we talk about the housing market. So feel free to scan the QR code, punch in your email, and you will receive the Behind the Street newsletter, which I write every Tuesday or every other Tuesday for everybody in the chat. And I think it's a good way for us to stay connected and continue our discussions that we have on the stream. And thank you everybody for joining. I think we have over 1,100 people that have been signed up to the Behind the Street newsletter. And I think about I think that we have a 68% open rate, which is fantastic. So thank you guys for reading and supporting my work and reading the newsletter. But we are outside Italy now. Bora 12 says, is this real live? Yes, so we are live here in New York City, actually right outside of the Flatiron building. But a little thing that's disappointing about this is the Flatiron building is totally covered in scaffolding until I think at least the second half of 2023. But this is a beautiful building nonetheless right here near Madison Square Park. Hey, Pixelogic is here. Says happy Sunday, Tom. Hope you enjoyed your week. I did. I enjoyed my weekend very, very much. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Hey, a different take says the president shouldn't spend, and then reduce taxes for the 1%. Both moves increase the national debt. That is not conservative, that is reckless. Yeah, a different take. I think you made a good point. I think that's a really good point. Wow, check out these flowers here. Beautiful colors. Dutchman is joining us. Good to see you, Dutchman. MBA Elias says, awesome newsletter, Tom. Keep up the great work. Hey, MBA Elias, thank you so much for reading. Much appreciated. And thank you for joining the stream. Hey, Starboy says, what is the per annum average salary for a certified management account in New York City? Accountant in New York City? Is that what you mean? I'm not sure that exact salary target, but if I had to assume, maybe around 100,000. I don't know. I work in enterprise tech or enterprise software, so I can really only advise on like those type of salaries and investment banking salaries. But if anybody, I'm sure we have an accountant here in the chat, but I would assume, you know, especially with inflation the way it is, it probably got a decent sized pay bump. You know, we were just talking about an interesting article that came out. I think it was Marilyn who sent it to me, that in order to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City, if you're going to rent it by yourself, this assumes the 40 times rule, or the 40x, right? You need to make 40 times the rent. You need to make at least $168,000, which is totally crazy. I think the number is a little bit skewed because not a lot of people live by themselves in New York. They either live with, you know, a spouse or roommates, so that could sort of help them with the rent. I don't even know one person that just lives by themselves and pays, you know, $3,900 in rent. Usually they split it with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or they split it with roommates. But if you want to have your own place by yourself, supposedly the median rent here is about $3,900, which is crazy. I mean, which is really, really crazy. That's right up there with San Francisco, I think. So I think the 3 most expensive cities in the United States, I think New York City is number 1. Then I think it's San Francisco. And then it may be Miami, Florida. But if you guys want to fact check me in the comments, please do. But I think that is the top 3. You know, somebody that watches the streams all the time, a good friend of mine, sent me an article, but I forgot the top 3. That may be the top 3. Hey, SD Robs is live with my grandmother in Queens. Well, Rob, thank you for watching, and I hope you and your grandmother are having a good night. Anna says, hey Tom, Boston is also pricey. So, yeah, you're right. Boston is also pricey. Big pharmaceutical town up there in Boston. Hey, Juan Suarez is here. Good to see you. T. Campbell says, what do you think can be done to fix short? What do you think can be done in the short term to fix our supply chain problems? I feel that's just as important as it is to raise rates to reduce inflation. Yeah, I agree. And I think the honest answer is not much. Not much. And we were talking about this, I think, in our stream on Tuesday. Excuse me, was it either Tuesday or was it 2 Tuesdays ago when the ISM PMI numbers, so the manufacturing numbers, came out? One of the interesting things in that report, to sort of piggyback and jump off of what you're talking about, if you scroll down, I think if you type !PMI in the chat, I actually programmed the Nightbot where you guys could read the actual ISM, so the Institute of Supply Management PMI manufacturing report on business. If you look at a lot of the respondents, notice a lot of the verbiage and a lot of the talk around supply chain. And you'll notice the number one thing that they talk about. And the number one thing is they said that they're seeing extreme supply chain pressures due to the zero COVID policy in China. So obviously that can affect the import-export when, just 2 months ago, China re-entered a lockdown in some of their major cities. Manufacturing was cut to a halt. If we talk about and think about semiconductor production, chip fabricators, so that put a real hurt on the supply chain as well. So I think it's going to take some time for things to sort of work out. I was also reading another article in the Wall Street Journal today where they talked about some unionization issues at a lot of the ports in California. But I don't know, any ideas? What do you guys think? This may be a little bit of heat lightning over here, or it's just basic somebody having a party, but what do you guys think? Is that heat lightning? NBA Elias says, Tom, don't forget Honolulu, Hawaii. The cost of living is brutal out there. You know what? You're right. I completely forgot about that. Hey, Mike Chang. Hey, what's up, man? Long time no see. I hope you're doing well. Mike Chang says, thoughts on when we will start seeing a turnaround in the market? So I think, and I wrote about this a little bit in the Behind the Street newsletter, I think that since it's a midterm election year, Joe Biden and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is going to do the dirty work now. And what I mean is they're going to raise interest rates, the Federal Reserve, and they are going to unwind their nearly $9 trillion balance sheet, or called quantitative tightening. So that is going to roll off or contract at about $40 billion a month, I think, for 3 months. And then after the third month, we're going to ramp that up to $90 billion a month. Okay, so by the end of 2023, they predict that the balance sheet will contract about 1.5 trillion. So what would that bring us? That would bring us to the end of the third year, the fourth year of Biden's presidency. So here's what I think may happen. By that time, I think the Federal Reserve will be successful in killing off inflation. And assuming that happens, Fed Chair Jerome Powell can then say, okay, we have inflation under control. There's going to be no more rate hikes. We are going to stop quantitative tightening. We're going to let one more CPI print roll through. And if that CPI print is less or the same, they're going to start quantitative tightening. They're going to start quantitative easing again and lower interest rates into the fourth year of the Biden presidency, in which I think the markets will absolutely take off like a bat out of hell. But again, that's speculation. That is my thought process. Man, I can't get over this view of the Empire State Building. Because if you think about it, I'm not trying to be too political. I always try to, I don't like getting political because that can come off as disingenuous. But if I'm a financial analyst working at an investment bank, or if I'm at a hedge fund and I'm managing clients' money, this is how I'm thinking right now. Okay, I have extreme amounts of cash right now, and once the Federal Reserve stops quantitative tightening and starts quantitative easing, on the first follow-through day, I'm going to commit 20% of capital and probably go long on margin if we start quantitative easing again. But that's just, look, I could be totally wrong. That's just a total guess there. But if somebody were to say, when do you think the market's going to turn around? The latter part of the third year of Biden's presidency, or the fourth year, because that is when the markets are probably going to be so bottomed out and we could potentially start quantitative easing again. Somebody, I forget his name, sent me a really nice message on IG. And it was a really good Stanley Druckenmiller interview, which I have not yet watched. John L. also sent me that interview via my email. So John L., thank you. But also somebody else, I just forget your name right now. But thank you for sending that to me. I will post that in the Discord. So if you guys click the link somewhere in the description, if you want to join the Discord, I will post that Stanley Druckenmiller interview. Stanley Druckenmiller is really essentially probably one of the greatest investors of all time, if not the greatest. Maybe aside from like Paul Tudor Jones or something like that. Maybe Ray Dalio. And he is extremely, extremely focused on the Fed. and monetary policy, fiscal policy, things like that. Hey, the Mighty Bull, good to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure to have you here, Mighty Bull. Let's walk over to Park Avenue real quick. Hey, the RT440, this is Tom. With bank interest rates on savings almost zero, how do banks have enough cash in their savings accounts to meet the financial strength requirements? Well, isn't that coming up soon? The RT440, the, what's it called? The Federal Reserve does, I'm blanking on the name, but the Federal Reserve does do a stress test for the banks. And I think that either just happened or it's coming up soon. But as interest rates are going up, that's actually could be a positive for the banks based upon how they lend, right? And we were just talking about credit cards as well. So now that our household debt, is at an all-time high, and interest rates are going up. Look at how beautiful this building is. And interest rates are going up, credit card debt's at an all-time high. Those minimum payments on those credit cards are also going to go up a lot. So banks are going to make more on that across the board, I think. I think that the biggest risk, maybe, to a lot of these banks is a potential default risk on some of the mortgages. But I'd put that at very, very low levels of default risk, because not a lot of the loans they wrote have adjustable rates on those notes. And the lending standards are a lot better. A lot of the lending standards are really, really tight. I think I told the story of when I tried to buy my house, they ran me through it was literally insane. And I make a decent income. Nothing crazy, but yeah, the Fed stress test, it's called. I'll have to Google that, or maybe somebody in the chat can Google when this Fed stress test is. Hey, Super Beast is here. Says, I could see Tom's silhouette, but no Tom. Hey, Victor Papas says, hey Tom, wish I could jump through the TV in New York City. It's such a beautiful place. Hey, I wish you could too, Victoria. So my contacts, after a long, long day, my contacts get all fuzzy. But yeah, Victoria, please come and visit us in New York. We'd love to have you, that's for sure. But if you guys and girls are enjoying tonight's live stream, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We usually do these about 5 days a week. I love hanging out with you guys, so please feel free to like and subscribe. Captain Coomer is here. Says, Tom, a lot of people predicting the complete and total collapse of the dollar. Yeah, Captain Coomer, a lot of people are, but here's something weird that I'll say. And then I want to know what you guys think, because I like hearing from you guys more than I like hearing from myself. The relative strength of the dollar is actually really, really high. And the reason why I think is because in times of financial uncertainty or economic uncertainty, even though we understand, I think everybody knows, fiat currency is horrible, the US dollar has lost about 95% of its purchasing power so far, but on a relative basis, when we're talking about relative strength, the US dollar, or the USD index, actually tends to perform quite well. Because think about it, during an economic downturn, what is the famous saying, everybody? When the United States economy catches a cold, the rest of the world gets the flu? Or is that flipped around? But yeah, think about all the other countries across the world, right? Just think about a lot of the countries in Eastern Europe. Would you want to be holding your native currency, or would you want to be holding US dollars? I don't know. But I agree with the hypothesis or supposition, or whatever you want to call it, that the US dollar will continue to erode its value 100%. Hey, Ruby Falcone is here. Hopefully you had a good weekend, Ruby. Hey, the Curtis family says the nightly walk is getting addicting to follow. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we love doing them. And thank you, the Curtis family, for watching. It's a beautiful night out here. Captain Coomer says, we need to go back on the gold standard now, Tom. I definitely agree with that, Captain Coomer. So Captain Coomer, very interesting that you mentioned that. So 2 days ago on the stream, we were talking about our good friend Paul Volcker. Let me see if I want to cross the street. No, maybe we'll just walk up Park. We never get a chance to walk up Park Avenue, so we'll walk up Park Avenue. So many people believe, oh guys, it wasn't heat lightning. It was just the top of the one Vanderbilt. I thought it was lightning, but. So a lot of people think the reason why inflation got so crazy and so far out of control that Paul Volcker had to raise interest rates to 20% to kill off inflation is because of what happened in 1971. Right, is when we went off the gold standard, which is obviously very inflationary, any fiat currency. And, you know, Ray Dalio actually wrote about this in his most recent book. I forget the name of his most recent book. It's not Principles, it's the one that came after that, which is a phenomenal book, by the way. Highly recommend you check it out. But Ray Dalio took an entire chapter and wrote about that exact same thing when we went off the gold standard, and how ever since from that point it has exacerbated asset bubbles and boom and bust cycles, right? Because when you have fiat money and it's not stable, it really messes with the average person's emotions, right? And it forces the Federal Reserve to have extreme amounts of power via adjusting these interest rates, printing money out of thin air, which can really send assets to the moon and really crater them down into the dust, like we've seen in 2020. You know, I hate crossing these streets right here because this is a huge blind spot I could never see, and sometimes people come around here like 90 miles an hour. Yeah, so I mean, just look what happened when here we have Credit Suisse. Just look what happened when with the COVID credit crisis, right? There was no liquidity, everything froze up. The Federal Reserve had to come in there and print a bunch of money, and equities went one way higher, right? We printed a ton of money. You know, I think that'd be a little bit harder to do if we had some sort of sound money principles. But there's also a lot of arguments against that as well. I think anybody who studies like John Maynard Keynes or Keynesian economics would maybe have a disagreement with me on that. And I think that's fine. I think that's fine. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not doing a good job of reading the comments tonight. Sierra C says, Tom, the stress test results will be released on June 23rd. Hey, there we go. Thank you for that. Hey, Danielle Valenzuela is here. Danielle Valenzuela says, hey, Tom, I'm from Argentina. The economy here is a disaster. A few years ago, I was in Manhattan. I would love to go back. Dude, please come back. Please come back, my friend. Yeah, I apologize. You know, talk about inflation. I mean, that is a place with extremely high inflation. I mean, we're complaining about, you know, 8.6% inflation. I mean, I think you guys have 50%. So it's definitely very trying times here. But if you ever have the chance to come back to New York, let me know. I'd love to meet up for coffee or whatever. Captain Coomer, I don't know that. Al J is here. Says, hey everybody, good to see you. Hey, Nirvana Fan 500 says, why are people still wearing masks? So I think in New York, I don't think it's mandated, but you have the choice to if you want. I was on the airplane today. I was flying, and I don't believe you're required to wear masks anymore. So the only time, I don't really want to get into a big mask conversation because we will be shadow banned and demonetized, which is all right. But I'll only wear masks on the subway because the subway is disgusting. And not really for COVID reasons, but just think about all the stuff we're breathing in down there, right? I mean, think about all the rats and the rodents that run around on the tracks. Think about all like the cigarette butts and God knows what else down there. And when the trains rip by at like 60 miles an hour, you get that plume of dust that I definitely don't want to be breathing in. So the only time I'll really wear a mask anymore now is if I'm in the subway, just because I think the air quality is so horrible. But look, if you want to wear the mask, if it makes you feel comfortable, you know, knock yourself out. I don't care. I tend to take a more libertarian stance on that. If you want to wear it, go ahead. If you don't, that's all right. Hey, Billy Benoit says, we have the worst system in the world except for everybody else's. That's I shouldn't be laughing at that, but that's actually pretty funny. Yeah, like our system, if I would say, you know, in times like this, the problem is, and this is up for debate. And again, whenever I try to say an opinionated thing, I always like to tell you guys it's an opinionated, just because I think it's better. I think in times like this, capitalism will get blamed and say, see, it's the price of oil is so high and the price of gas is so high because all these greedy oil companies. Inflation is so high is because Tyson Foods is expanding their profit margins, and you know, Target is expanding their profit margins. When actually, if you look and you paid attention to the earnings report that Target just came out with, they actually said their margins were contracting. Oh, but that's right, nobody pays attention. Okay. So if you had free markets and you didn't have a managed market from the Federal Reserve, none of this stuff would be happening. So what we have now in the United States, in my opinion, again, opinionated, is we have crony capitalism and not traditional free market enterprise, in my opinion. I think we have corporate socialism, where we socialize the profits for big organizations. And I think we've seen this, I think the biggest example of this, everybody, and you can give me some pushback if you want, is during the 2008 financial crisis, right? We had the American taxpayer bail out all of these big investment banks, when if you had a traditional capitalistic system, we would have let these banks go under, right? But I know there's a lot of debate for that, but I don't know, that's just sort of my thought process. Hey, Victoria, thank you so much for the $7.99 donation. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for supporting. Wendy England says, when you print money like that and have low interest rates, you will get inflation. I agree. Dow Jones says banks don't like BTC and ETH. Line Sync says the incident of flu went right down in the UK during mandatory mask wearing and hand sanitizing. No surprise. Good to see you, Line Sync. Kevin Ramsey is here. Good to see you, Kevin. Tamara says, my family likes your live stream so much. You should stream in the morning too. Yeah, so I only really have time to stream late at night. So we usually go live at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time because I'm working all day. You know, sometimes I can work 12 hours. But yeah, I mean, if I ever get a time to stream during the day, I definitely will. Flat Smack is here, says, what's up, Tom? Looks like a nice night. Thank you, Flat Smack, for being here. Much appreciated. Nirvana fan. Two Wheel Freedom. This is while listening here. Anybody else? Oh, I just lost your comment. Anybody else have a chart opening? Watch BTC nosedive. Yeah, so my target has been the 200-week moving average. So if you have TradingView up right now, see if we're at 23,000. Hey, Mark Francis, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I appreciate your kindness in supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Pit2 NYC says, hey Tom, what part of the city do you live in? So I don't live in the city anymore, but I used to live at Central Park South because I got a killer deal during the pandemic. When nobody wanted to rent apartments in the city, I was able to get a studio right at Central Park South for just a hair under $2,000. So I moved out because I bought a place in Southern Florida, in Miami. But when I moved out, my landlord rented that same unit to somebody else for I think $4,300 or $4,500. Think about how crazy that is. A studio. Could you imagine paying almost $5,000 for a studio? That's insane. I mean, granted, it is on Central Park South, but I mean, the thing was a shoebox. Beautiful building, but I mean, $4,500 for a studio apartment on 59th Street and 6th. Insane prices. Really insane prices, guys. Timothy O'Neill. Hey, Timothy, good to see you. Says, I'm missing New York so much. Seeing videos from New York City makes me feel better. I've lived in Arizona for 25 years and I still hate it there. Really? Well. So Timothy O'Neill, that's actually a very interesting comment because a lot of people have been moving to Arizona. And many people like it, but maybe you need to change your pace. Maybe you need to come back to New York. So I used to frequent, well, I shouldn't say frequent. I used to go to Las Vegas every now and then for work. I don't think I could ever live there, to be totally honest. And I don't like to really rag on a place a lot, but I don't think I could ever in my life actually have a full-time residence in Nevada. You know, the last time I went to Nevada, and you guys could look this up, you could fact check me. It was the hottest temperature ever recorded on planet Earth. Literally, you can go look it up. The last time I went to Las Vegas, it was like 127 degrees. And it was the hottest recorded temperature on Earth. It was insane. I couldn't even describe it. It was almost like when you're cooking a Thanksgiving turkey and you open up the oven and you sort of get almost burned from like the steam that's coming out of the oven. That's sort of how it was. Hey, I'm Flim says I wouldn't live in New York even if it was for free. Nice. James is 127 degrees. Yeah, it was like 120 or 127. Matthew says, I could tell Tom has his ways of being super thrifty. I like it because I'm the same way. I grew up in Las Vegas. Appreciate that. Hey, Design Ideas, good to see you again. Thank you so much for the $5 donation. This is Tom offers some of the best Wall Street and US economic advice around, and it's free. Welcome back to New York City. Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, I have a blast talking with everybody. And thank you, Design Ideas, for the support. And thank you for being here. And thank you for the warm welcome back to New York. Design Ideas, I should be here for about 7 days, but then I have to fly back to Miami. So the reason why I'm back is on Thursday, I'm gonna be giving, I guess you could call it a keynote or a presentation at a healthcare conference here talking about wage parity. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the wage parity law when it pertains to New York and EVV, electronic visit verification softwares, as well as EMR software as well. So a lot of home healthcare agencies will be there and things like that. Hey Mark, this is Tom. How do you like Florida? I'm still in the process of selling my house. It's down to 2 people. Ooh, Mark, nice. So I'm really liking it so far. I really, really like it. You know, I will say it's not for everybody, because as you guys know, I really like the humidity. And I know that sounds weird, but I like it hot and humid all year round. That's sort of what I like. But it's good. And you know, one of the things that a lot of people were telling me that I wouldn't like when I moved to Miami was the public transportation. I'm not trying to be biased, I'm giving you my exact opinion. I have never had a problem with Miami-Dade public transit. Never have. The bus drivers are nice, they're kind, they're courteous. I jump on the bus, I go to downtown, I go to the office, I jump back on the bus, I go home. So everything's been fine for me. I like it so far. Check this thing out. Looks like some type of a dinosaur here. Yeah, XOXX Bob's like the Metro Mover. Hey, PBM says, I love your channel. Stay safe out there from Chile. Hey, thank you for the kind words. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Hey, Ali, this is Tom. Do you have any thoughts on the UFO topic? So I don't really have any thoughts on that, but if I were to give you a brief opinion on it, I don't have any expertise in that realm, but if I had a gun to my head and somebody said, are aliens or UFOs real? And if I had to guess, I'd say yes. Just because if we think about just how big the universe is, statistically, there's probably something else out there, right? I don't know if that's like in human life form or just in like microbes or something, but I don't know. I think there's probably something out there. But then again, I am totally ignorant to, I have zero experience in space or anything. So please take that with a grain of salt, an extreme grain of salt. Nirvana Fan 500 says, do you think we are living in a simulation? Perhaps. TMB is safe for riding a bicycle in New York City or Miami? Probably New York City, not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. So that's my view, but because the thing about Miami, and they are fixing it, the bike lanes in Miami are literally in the same lane as the cars. And down there, these people drive like insanity. And that's coming from a New Yorker. I mean, I deal with people who drive crazy, but down there, I mean, these people are... But I think they're gonna make their own dedicated bike lanes there, which they should. Wow, check out this shot. So you could see a cloud in real time moving past the top of the Empire. It looks awesome. Hey Arturo, good to see you. Hey War Walker, what's up? Good to see you, War Walker. Hey Martin Emilio says, regardless of the battery level, or for that matter, is it better to use a bicycle or a scooter? So when I was in Austin, Texas, I just got back from Austin, Texas, I took those electric scooters everywhere. So I would say electric scooter. All right, so everybody, just a quick recap for the people who are joining. Tomorrow's a big week on Wall Street, right? We have the FOMC meeting, which will be concluding on Wednesday. Now, if you look at the futures market, they pretty much priced in 100% that we're gonna get at least a 50 basis point rate hike. Well, after yesterday's last week's crazy CPI print coming in hotter than expected, there is a possibility we can get a surprise 75 basis point rate hike next week from our pal, Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve. Now, if that happens, everybody, the last time we got a 75 basis point rate hike was before I was even born. It was in 1994. So just keep that in mind on Wednesday. But we'll cover it on the stream. I should be streaming Wednesday. But tomorrow we have Oracle, which is Larry Ellison's company. They will report their fourth quarter, results. And many analysts on Wall Street are expecting lower earnings. So this is a trend here. They're expecting about $1.37 versus $1.54 this same quarter a year ago. Revenue is expected to come in on the high side of about 11.6 billion versus 11.2 same quarter last year. So that is definitely one to watch, because if Oracle comes in with a good report, that is usually a telltale sign of what a lot of the other large software companies will come in at. Hey, Andre Brown, dude, good to see you, man. Always a pleasure to our friend Andre. So this is the One Vanderbilt, looking beautiful tonight. Hey, NBA Elias, Tom, what if the Fed does 100 basis points and stops for the rest of the year? Short-term pain, long-term gain. I mean, I think it's possible. You know, NBA Elias, it's interesting that you bring that up. You know who said that? So right after we got that crazy, I just stepped on a roach. Right after we got that crazy CPI print, Jim Cramer, and I know he's a very controversial guy, but Jim Cramer immediately tweeted that we need a 100 basis point rate hike, or a full percentage point. So, I mean, look, maybe you'll be right. I really don't think so. I think if that happened, we'd see an extreme shock. But then again, look where futures are right now. I mean, stock futures are cratering, falling off a cliff. So maybe investors are front running the rate hikes that could be coming this week. But I think there's a pretty good chance we're at least going to get 75 basis points. I think it's guaranteed a lock on 50, but maybe you're right. Tamara says, you need to answer my emails for more YouTube subscribers. I try to answer as many emails as possible, but it's sort of hard during the day, because during the day, it's literally, I'm glued to my computer at my regular job working. So I don't really have any time to respond, but I try to do the best I can. I really, really try to answer everybody. So I will try to do a better job, I promise. But sometimes it's just so difficult to respond to everybody. Andre says, I think my wife... Oh, hooded on you. She was listening to the lending conversation. Ren 1018 says, Jim Cramer sometimes is dead right. Matthew says, buy low, sell high. Good to see you, Matthew. Hey, amazing air show videos. Says Cramer said 100 basis points a couple months back, then said he may be able to cut it back to 25 basis points. Now back to 100 basis points. He is overly emotional. No way he could survive trading now. Oh my God. That's funny. Yeah, Jim Cramer is definitely a controversial character for sure. Oh, you know who I ran into, everybody? It's a little bit off topic here. But as I was coming out of the office on Park Avenue, so I've been working, every time I'm in New York, I've been choosing to work out of the WeWork on Park Avenue. You know who I ran into walking out of the office? I didn't say anything. I said a quick hello, but I didn't want to pester him. But I ran into David Faber. Yeah, right on Park Avenue. I just gave him a little head nod. I didn't want to pester him and upset him, but... Hey, Yogi says, if my parents could live on beans and rice coming from Central America, we could weather this with no problems. Yeah, so I think that's the comment of the night. Who said that? Yogi? Yogi, I think that's the comment of the night right there. Because if you think about it, the way the American quality of life, in my opinion, is unmatched. I mean, if you really think about it. So if you put things into perspective, comparing our situation to the rest of the world, I mean, there's people literally willing to risk their lives and their children's lives to walk hundreds of miles to the southern border just for the chance to step foot on American soil. Also, in Florida, you want to hear a crazy story? So I was reading the Miami Herald. For some reason, they're sending it to my house. I don't pay for it, but they keep sending it to me every Sunday. It's actually a pretty decent paper. The U.S. Coast Guard has intercepted a record number of Haitian, like, makeshift rafts trying to come to the United States. And it was so heartbreaking, the story. It's almost unreal. I'll have to find the story and drop it in the link in the description. But these people are literally getting like a blow-up mattress to cross the ocean when in the midst of all these crazy storms, and the Coast Guard is like, we intercept so many of them, but we estimate probably hundreds of people died trying to come to the beaches of Florida. So I think, Yogi, your point, even though we have crazy inflation here, America has its problems. You know, I think we should be really cognizant of what other people are going through elsewhere and be extremely thankful that we're here. You know, reading some of those stories is wild. I mean, think about that. Blowing up an air mattress or something to literally cross just to try to have a fresh start in another country. I mean, that to me is you know, it just puts it into perspective. So I think you're 100% right. Yeah, Wendy England says the same is happening in Europe. Yeah, I mean, look what's happening in Eastern Europe. I think you're 100% right. Mark says, Tom, how is T-Mobile in Florida? Do you know I have the max plan with the throttle? So Mark, I don't use T-Mobile. I do use Verizon, but here's what I'll tell you. If you stay in downtown Miami or Brickell, Verizon is fine. But in places like Sunny Isles Beach, it definitely does not work. But I would assume T-Mobile would be fine, because here's the thing about T-Mobile. So T-Mobile, I like to call it an acquisition. T-Mobile acquired Sprint. I know it was technically called a merger, but I mean, you know, regardless, I'll digress on that. So T-Mobile benefited so much from that acquisition, or the merger with Sprint, because the vast majority of the 5G build out in the United States is going to be run on mid-band spectrum. And it just so happened that Sprint has the most mid-band spectrum of any other carrier in the entire United States. So during that acquisition, T-Mobile didn't really care about taking over Sprint's existing customers. They just wanted the spectrum. So as they start to roll out 5G, I think T-Mobile is going to have, or they're poised to have, the best network, because they have all of that precious mid-band spectrum. But that's just my view. Hey, Tech Explorers NYC, good to see you, man. This is good evening, good to see you too, Tech Explorers NYC. Ryan Royal says, people can feel how they want to feel about immigration, but I can guarantee if you lived in Haiti, you would want to leave also. This is Ryan Royal. Hey, Jimmy Boyle says, welcome back to New York. Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree. I mean, America is a one-way street. People want to come here. You know, I think the biggest mistake, here's the biggest mistake I think America is making right now. And I'll explain why. Canada is actually doing a better job of allowing international students and international workers to gain visas to work in Canada. So a lot of times if people are trying to get an H-1B to come to the United States, it's extremely difficult. So a lot of that talent will go elsewhere. And right now, a lot of that talent is going to Canada. So if I were President Biden, one of the first things I would do is to, if you have a degree, hold on, let me zoom up on this. If you have a degree in any sort of STEM field and you want to come to the United States to work, I would automatically grant that H-1B visa without any waiting period at all. Because right now, the H-1B visa period is only by lottery. So it's literally a random selection lottery. And there's only a handful of people that actually can acquire those H-1B visas, even if your employer will sponsor you. So that allows a lot of talent to drift to other countries, such as Canada, and we don't want that. I mean, I love Canada. Many of you in the chat are Canadian. Love you guys. But at the end of the day, I'm not a Canadian. I'm an American, and I want the talent here so they can build products and services, start businesses that will go public on the exchange here. So that is the biggest blunder, at least in my opinion, that I think we're making. But that's just my opinion. So we're outside Macy's, 34th Street, Herald Square, and it is all lit up. I shouldn't say lit up, I should say decorated for Pride Month. So it is June, and this is, I believe, going to be decorated all month for the month of Pride, for June. Hey, Matthew says, just get married to a U.S. citizen and bingo, you're in. Hilarious. Hey, Billy, good to see you. Hey, Dr. Longus is here, welcome. Ollie's is stuck in this tax. Hey, Dollar Girl Twins says, don't believe what you read about Canada. Yeah, so Canada has its flaws, but I think the that specific, I think they're doing a little bit better job with the immigration laws. Victoria says, I'd love Melbourne to look like America. It's beautiful, but not as New York City. It's beautiful, but not as beautiful as New York City. Copy that. Hey, Sally is here. Welcome, Sally. Good to see you. All right, let's continue on our walk. Let's walk up Broadway. You know what, guys? Could we do a quick time check in the chat? I just want to make sure we're on time. You know, I started the stream late, unfortunately, which I apologize for. But guys, in the chat, let's not get too political and say, oh, this party sucks, that party sucks. We're just trying to chill. We're not trying to, we're just trying to hang out. 11:02, thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, Quants. I see Quants here, dude. What's up? Hey, Tech Explores NYC says, yes, marriage remains the easiest way to get into the United States without limitations. Tech Explores NYC, hope you're well. Hey, NMB 045 says, Tom, I don't recognize Herald Square at nighttime. Yeah, so this is the main Macy's right here. Hey, Styles is my first time here. Well, welcome. We usually go live 5 days a week at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time between New York City and Miami. And we talk about the US economy and a bunch of other stuff as well. But tonight's topic was the FOMC meeting that will be concluding on Wednesday. All right, here's the 10 out of 10 Empire State Building view. What do you guys think? So in the chat, I think this is probably a 10 out of 10. You know, I think it would be a little bit better if it was lit up a different color, but it still looks good with the classic white. Hey, Raul is here, good to see you. Nuance is 11 out of 10, agreed. Hey, Ollie, this is Tom. You should watch Billions. It's an amazing show. You know, a lot of people have been telling me to watch Billions. I haven't watched it, but maybe I'll get around to. I don't really watch too much TV. But everybody, we are also going to be getting some housing data. So we will be getting some housing data coming out this week. And I think that's important because as interest rates go up, that also affects the housing market, right? So I believe that it looks like an event's going on here. I believe that a 30-year fixed will probably go to 6%. We are above 5% on a 30-year fixed for the first time since 2011. Okay, so demand for mortgages has plummeted to, I think, a 10-year low. Because right now we have prices of single-family homes, multifamily properties, however you want to call it, at all-time record highs. So if you have a starter home for $450 or $500, and 3 months ago you could acquire that property with a 30-year fixed below 3%, and now if you want to acquire that same home at that same price, your monthly payment is going to double, right? Because now you're paying a 5% note as opposed to sub 3%, like you were a couple months ago. So that's going to do one of two things here. Number one, it's going to cool the housing market. It is going to cool the housing market. So I do not think the volume of homes that were being sold previously with low rates, that volume is probably going to taper off. Number two, that means the prices of homes could potentially come down. But here's one reason why they may not come down. What may happen is home prices just stagnate and not go up as fast, and the housing market will just cool. But I think it is rather unlikely to have that 2008 style housing crash. I think that may be rather unlikely, because for that to happen, you're going to need a massive amount of supply to come on the market. And the main way in 2008 that a massive amount of homes came onto the market was because everybody was defaulting on their mortgages at the same time. Okay, and why was that? Well, leading up to 2008, 2006, 2007, the underwriting policies, or the practices of underwriting this debt, was egregious. A lot of times people were getting 2 or 3 mortgages. They weren't having any credit check. There was no income requirements. There was no income verification. Their credit scores were often very poor. Now it's actually quite the opposite. It's actually rather hard to get approved or qualified to get a mortgage. And in this cycle, we've seen a record amount of homes sold with all cash. So I think it's very hard for let's just let this guy pass and then we'll continue to walk. I think it's going to be very hard for somebody to default on a mortgage if they don't have one, right? So that's why I think the housing market will not crash as many people are calling for. It'll probably slow down, but the only way that I could see a housing crash is if we have a record number of defaults, which I think is rather unlikely due to the increased standards of lending, if that makes sense. But what do you guys think? Van says he hates the can. But if you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you are new. And if you want to continue this conversation, because we're going to run out of battery, if you scan the QR code on your screen, It'll bring you to the Behind the Street newsletter, which is a free financial newsletter that I write every other Tuesday for the Walks on Wall Street crew right here. We cover not only the US equities markets, we cover emerging markets, we cover the housing market, fixed income. So this will be issue number 23. So we've written 22 editions of the Behind the Street newsletter. We'd love for you to stay up to date on the markets with us. And if you have any suggestions on what we should write about or which topics to cover on the Behind the Street newsletter specifically, please send us an email or follow us on Twitter at Walks Wall Street. But scan the QR code, punch in your email, and you will be signed up to receive a free financial newsletter. Ooh, I want to see what Johnny has to say. So Johnny Rockberry says, Tom, I have worked in real estate for 24 plus years in California, and I think you were very correct about the market, very strict lending policies now. So Johnny, I have a couple questions for you actually. If you don't mind me asking. So I'm assuming you're in real estate sales. Maybe I shouldn't assume that, but are you seeing a tapering off in demand in California? Because California is one of those markets that hasn't been, or one of those states that hasn't been as hot as like an Arizona or a Florida. So are you seeing a lot of your clients demand wane? And if so, what is their number one objection as to why they're not pulling the trigger to close the deal? Is it rates? Because some people that may be high net worth or ultra high net worth may not be as rate sensitive as somebody making the median income in the United States. So I would be interested in your thoughts on that, if you don't mind me asking. Because I am not in the real estate industry, so anytime I come across a real estate salesperson, I always like to ask those questions because they're talking to clients every single day. So what are those objections? But everybody, we do have some bad news. The bad news is my phone is about to die. The good news is we are going to be back here at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time in the greatest city on earth. Should I help this guy? I hope this guy's all right. He looks passed out. I may have to help him. All right, we're going to end this stream. I may have to call somebody to help that guy. But everybody, thank you so much. Johnny says, thanks, Tom. I actually work in escrow and title. Have done some real estate sales. The issue here in Los Angeles is very low inventory and overbidding on properties. Johnny, thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. I gotta go deal with some stuff here. But everybody, thank you. We'll see you at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you like the stream tonight, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and please join the Behind the Street newsletter. And we will see you next time. All right. British Gray, thank you. DWG, Ruby Falcone, Yogi, MBA Elias, Daniel G, thank you so much. And I'm going to go help this guy. Love you guys. Take it easy and have a great week.